Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Viking Academy podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Gina Mollicone-Long. Yes, I added a little extra Italian there because I like to pronounce the last name correctly. As you can imagine, Solbakken gets crushed every time by anybody who says it. Here's the thing with Gina, she is an academically trained engineer. She brings philosophy, the interconnectivity of philosophy and science and spirit to help people get what they want. We have this conversation that goes deep into not only the fabric of spirit, but mind and body. It all encompasses together. Gina's, shall we call it ethos, is that everyone has greatness within them. And her job is to reveal that greatness. Once you realize that what's holding you back is actually you, and you realize that there's some blockages inside you that's stopping your wishes and dreams coming true, then all of a sudden you can start having what you want and realizing that really this is all a big game for us. Life is just one big game. And if you can embrace that feeling of joy and spirit of gratitude, you're going to unlock that. We go into a lot of other details in this podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it. I could have talked to her for probably 3 hours plus. We're going to have another podcast in us for sure. But without further rambling on by me, let's go explore. Gina, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We were just off air here. We were talking about how to pronounce her last name, and because everybody always fucks up my name, like Solbach. My mother-in-law still doesn't get my last name right.
Oh, come on.
Just Solbakken, and I'm like, where's the bulk in Solbakken?
Where's the L?
But it's like pronunciation. It's like Solbakken is the Norwegian way to actually pronounce it, but it's been anglicized to Solbakken, and so with your last name, it's Mollicone is the Canadianized version, Mollicone-Long, but
Yeah.
it's Mollicone-Long.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just in Italy and they were calling me to pick up my car, and I was like,
Oh, and you just like,
and I was like, that's
you,
me.
yeah, the angels are singing. It's like someone's calling my name by the right pronunciation
Without me even having to say anything.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Well, and the hyphen too. When I fly on Air Canada and they come around to say hello to the super elites or whatever, and they stand there in front of me for a minute, I can just tell, like, they're like, oh my God, because hyphens don't exist in airlines. And so it's all one smashed together name. And they just stand there and I feel for them. And if I'm feeling like a good mood, I just say, call me Gina. If not, then I sit and wait for them to give it a try.
Oh, yeah. I haven't. I'm going to be working up to that. My flying schedule is starting to really ramp up now, so I'm going to have that elite status here, and probably next month.
It is worth it just for the lack of having to worry about things.
Yeah, I have been getting more and more fired up about this podcast with you. You and I met at a dinner in Toronto, and then right at the end of the evening, Stell and Krista, they introduce us and we're like, oh my God, we got to talk. And then it was like, okay, be on the podcast. Poof. And that was,
and I think we talked for about 5 minutes outside and it was about -2 million. And because I remember it being cold, but I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. So that was the weirdest part of all of it.
Well, this is the thing is I'm so excited about this. I was looking over your website and what you do for people to help them unlock the comment that just struck me is that when you, and I say I'm gonna wreck this already.
It's okay.
When you realize your breakthroughs happen when you recognize that you are more energy than matter.
Sounds a bit wooey, right? But it's true.
Well, from a quantum level, it is true.
Well, it's true from a matter level too. But I mean, it depends on which end of the pole you want to focus on.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit more about like, how did you even get into, because I thought when I first met that you were like, should we call it the quote unquote motivational speaker? And then I started looking at the depth of it. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure you do. Cause I know I get it all the time too. I'm like, no, don't call me that. Thank you very much.
I mean, if that's what helps people understand, like, because they the average person can contextualize my jobs because I can barely contextualize my job. So, um, honestly, like it started. I don't even know. I mean, if we really want this lifetime, probably when I was a kid, but uh, practically, honestly, I did an engineering degree because I was always good in math. And when you're young, you just kind of go where people tell you to go. But I was really, really good at teaching people. I was a gymnastics coach. And actually, when I was 16, I held five. Canada used to have this program called the NCCP coaching program, which was like a sports coaching, because that's all I mean, coaches were sports. There was nothing else. So when I was 16, I had five of them because I was really sporty. I thought I was really sporty, but I think I was really coachy. And, but that, you don't think of yourself like that because it wasn't in the 80s. That wasn't a thing. So I just coached them around. But then people kept telling me, well, that, you can't do that forever. So then I went to engineering school, and then, they said, well, you can't teach swimming when you're in engineering. You have to have a real job. So kind of ended up just kind of rolling with it. And I ended up at Procter and Gamble in advertising, which didn't make any sense at the time.
Especially engineering and advertising. I'm sorry, I don't
Well,
see the connection there.
P&G, I mean, I understood it once you work at P&G, you understand that they're hiring a personality, and they can teach you skills. So I learned how to advertise. And it's a benefit when you come in without a paradigm, right? I didn't know anything because I did an engineering degree. Anyways, and then I went to another company thinking that the reason why my soul felt like it wasn't being fulfilled was the company. And then I went to the other company and realized it wasn't the companies, it was the fact that I wasn't being myself. So I just started coaching. Well, it wasn't called coaching. I started consulting to CEOs when I was 27. But it wasn't, I cannot tell you how many days go by that I wish I had started the business coaching genre at that point in my life. I did not. So I just started doing stuff for CEOs. Really, what I was taking was my practical knowledge and my acquired personal knowledge, and I was applying it to people's businesses. And of course, the results were amazing. And I was learning a ton about myself. And then it just kind of like into a business. And over the last almost 3 decades, I started when I was 4. But seriously, I've collected more study of systems. So I study obviously what we'll call the science system. That would be the engineer in me. And then I have a master's degree in the philosophy of science and religion. And that would be the intersection of those two things you open to this question with. And I'm trained in a gazillion things in between them. And what is a benefit for me is I'm not attached. I don't think one has to be true. So therefore, I'm free to study them all. I'm not trying to prove one wrong or one right. I don't care. But what I do when I study a system is I can't help but notice the similarities, whether it's metaphorical or outright blatant. All the systems kind of say the same thing. And it just depends which system you're in, which language you're speaking, but they kind of say the same thing. So I kind of cobbled together the summary, and that's what I do.
Thank you for saying that, because it's interesting as I'm listening to your story. So you started as an engineer. We're kind of going into the woo-woo space. You're helping entrepreneurs. My path is very similar to that.
Right. I think that's why we hit it off.
I think so. Like there was a resonance there. Like you or me, or I was you in a past life, and you were me in a past life. There's some tie in here. You're my future self or past self, and which Tammy Grantham talked to me about. I'm still trying to get that one.
If you really want to get into it, there is no separation. So we're just talking to ourselves.
We're just talking to ourselves. I know, which becomes quite interesting. So, especially when you hear stuff out of your own mouth and go, "Wow, I said that? That's amazing." So I chartered accountant, but it did high level of philosophy or psychology. I did a psychology degree in university, and now I've come out of this going, I really want to explore the world, like the mind, body, and spirit.
Yep.
The Viking blanket, which is who I've always been, is this Viking. Sure. And so embracing who I am. But the thing that I found, especially in my readings of all the different religious literature, so we call it the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the Colburn Bible, the Nisargadatta Maharaj, I see the similarities. And I love the thing that you said there is not being attached to trying to make one right or one wrong. It's just seeing the connections. And for me, when I see a connection, I go, ooh, I get a little dopamine hit. It's like, oh, it's almost like you're starting to see the plan behind the story, so to speak.
Yeah, that's essentially it. And the connections affirm that they are connected. And then what I do is go back and see what is underrepresented in our modern vernacular, right? So we'll call it an unearthed secret, but it's not really a secret because it's been published in plain view for thousands of years. But what I look for is like, what does it say in there that we're not really doing here? Or what are we doing badly here? And that's how we came up with because the breakthrough process I do is actually quite, it's simultaneously phenomenal, but it's also like not what people expect because reframing, which is essentially what it is. I mean, it's a giant reframe, doesn't mean reliving. So it doesn't mean reactivating, re-traumatizing, whatever. It just means, rewriting. And so it's people expected it's going to be this, oh, is it going to be, am I going to cry a lot? Or, well, not unless you want to. Like because we're rewriting it. And so we don't have to go through it all again in the painful way. We can just come at it from a new perspective. So it's simultaneously extremely profound and yet a little bit, not wooey. I don't know how else
it's almost obvious. Like when you go through, is it when you go through it and you go, oh, that's how you do it?
Well, because people think energy is this weird thing, but it's just like the truth is that the you're not getting like, okay, I was thinking about this today actually. So my daughter is a neuroscientist, extremely really smart neural network kind of stuff. They're working on trying to get information when there's like injuries in the nervous system. So when there's an injury, say like a spinal cord injury to the nervous system, and you think legs walk, right? Like you want to walk, but you can't because the information cannot physically flow through can't flow across that broken part. Okay. Yeah. Can't get there. So the legs don't move. That's the inherent problem. So that's obvious to us. We accept that. We don't even question it. And we're working on it and good for us. And we'll get there. But what I'm talking about, when you have a reality in your life that you don't want or a result that eludes you, it's the same process, but it's not as obvious to you. But what's happening is the thinking is there. Obviously, it has to be there. And then when that information travels through the nervous system, it's getting waylaid. It's not getting to its destination. And then you can't do the actions that bring the result. So the information's not getting to its destination. And so what I ponder is that things that are a little bit less tangible are preventing that flow of information. And that could be negative emotions stuck in the nervous system, limiting beliefs that take more, that take over the program. So, you said this, but it went this way, whatever you want to call it. And while these things are metaphorical, they're also kind of real. And so when we do the systems that I've studied, and I haven't studied all of them, but the ones that I've studied, we change the path of information, right? So we remove the blockages in the nervous system. And that's not a metaphor. Now, it's not like pulling out a weed where you've got something in your hand. It's not material, but it's also not nothing. So it's somewhere between material and nothing that we pull out of the nervous system, and then the information can flow, and then you can do the behaviors that you couldn't do yesterday. And when you can do those behaviors because you have different choices for behavior, then you get results that you never got before.
I love the framing of the mind, or even say someone who's been injured in an accident, and all of a sudden they can't, their spinal cord doesn't transfer the information from the brain down to the legs to tell the legs to walk. And so from what you're saying is that if your life isn't unfolding the way you want it to, it's because your desires are not able to tell the legs to go move that way, or tell the universe to move that way, to manifest what you actually want.
It's just, there's something preventing the flow of information as you want it to go, right? There's something preventing it. And I'm speaking now, like, we can't crack open a human and pull out all the floppy disks and go, here are all the programs that don't work. But we are kind of like machines. And the reason we're like machines is because machines, computers in particular, were modeled after humans. So Carl Pribben, George Miller, and Galantner in the 50s, they were the original computer scientists. They were using human brains to try to make computers do what humans could do. So they were the model of the computer. And so we're not computers, but in my world, because of the engineering acumen, I find it very useful to suspend the process as if we were a machine, like a programmed machine. And then it's just a matter of taking out the programs that no longer work. They're not bad, right? They're not evil or wrong or pathetic. Like everybody was always beating themselves up. But, if you had, and you maybe you're old enough to remember this, you probably are, in the 90s, late 1900s.
Okay. 1990, I was 20.
Okay, great. So you'll remember this.
I mean, yeah. I might remember it because I was knee deep in Jack Daniels and cocaine at the time. But anyway.
You'll remember it. You'll remember it because Microsoft used to launch Office, like word processing, Excel, like Word, like Office Pro, the way we do iPhones now, right? Like big launches and stages and dancing and balloons and people lining up at the mall for the release. And it was crazy. If you think about it, it was a freaking word processor. But that's what they used to do. And I remember back then, because I was working at P&G, that if somebody was an early adopter and they went in that line and they got that program, and then they sent me a document in 1995 or 6 or 8, whatever, I couldn't open it because the models weren't compatible. Remember?
Right.
Okay. Now, it's very obviously I don't have the right program. Okay. It's not the guy's a jerk or throw my computer out the window or go to therapy and dig up all my past. It's simply I don't have the right program to open the document. So I need to go to the program store and get the program. And I need to get the program. I need to upgrade the program of the one that's broken, which is the problem I'm having. I'm having a problem with the one that's broken. So I got to upgrade that one. So if you take that analogy to now, right? If you were, I don't even think we could do this podcast, quite frankly, on Windows 95. Like I don't think, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, Windows 95 was it. It was the state of the art, right? Windows 9 was the state of the art. So at one time, it was an absolutely brilliant program that did everything of the time. But in now, it makes no sense. It wouldn't work at all. So humans are like that. So we have these programs that we created in childhood or teenagerhood or young adulthood or past lives, whatever. I don't know. I don't care, right? Doesn't matter. They were created in the past and they're no longer appropriate in the current time and environment. So they're not bad or wrong or dumb or stupid or shameful or whatever. They don't make sense anymore. So they have to be deleted and reprogrammed or upgraded. That's all we're doing. But humans are a bit weird, we're a bit hoardy about the way it used to be. We like to, we don't like things to change too much. That's our brain's job. I mean, its job is to keep you going day to day. So if you wake up today, the brain's like, okay, I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing unless told otherwise because, we're still here.
Right.
And there's the struggle because the heart's like, no, I want to grow. Right. And the brain's like, no.
I've felt that my entire life. I felt like I've been inside this, trying to fight out and punch out. And even when I thought I was quote unquote winning the game of life, being a chartered accountant and becoming a partner. And there was still a bit of an emptiness in there. There was still something I was longing for, searching for. And I constantly kind of feel that frustration of wanting to break through. And that's what I love about you. Just here's this breakthrough. It's not that I'm wrong. It's that I need a software upgrade. I talked about this on the last podcast I had. It's I truly believe humanity needs a software upgrade. We just need a consciousness upgrade. We need to.
Each one of us does, and then collectively it'll all go with it.
Yeah.
And in fact, it doesn't even need to be all of us.
No.
Right. Did you know that?
Power versus force.
Well, yeah. And Maharishi at one point calculated it was about 1% of a population would lift the entire population. And then as their data for TM, transcendental meditation, got more and more refined and better studies, he actually reduced that to the square root of 1%, which is not a lot of people, relatively speaking. So, that's the phrase, as one is lifted, all are lifted. So not a lot of us, but I have a question for you. Can I do that?
Giddy up.
So there you are, accounting and partnering and successing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say what a lot of my clients, my private clients say. Like I have a coaching practice, but we also have a school where we teach people. But when I'm talking with them, the first question I ask them is like, here you have this success. Outwardly, you're everybody's end game. People are looking at you like going, I want to be Eric, right? Whether or not they can pronounce your last name, irrelevant. They want to be you. Okay. But if you were being honest with me, and I would say if 10 is your maximum potential, like why you're here and give your gift, where were you operating at that point in your life, would you say?
Oh, in my potential. Oh, for me, it would be 3.
Right. No one I've worked with has ever said more than 5, maybe 6 one time. And I work with people who are exceptional peak performers. Like you would, Olympic athletes, best-selling, New York Times bestselling. They're not successful. Most people have their job as a goal. And when I ask them though, if we're being honest, and they'd be like, 4. I'm not even trying. I'm doing this while I'm doing something else.
Yes, exactly. It's like
So
it's like it's like there's a knowing inside of me that there's so much more. That
right.
it's like knowing that there's a vault of gold in there that we haven't even scratched the surface.
Well, and this is exactly like I spent months and dollars, lots of them, with a marketing agency to really come up with a succinct why. Remember, I worked in advertising, so I really respect the field. And we ended up on reveal greatness. And it took a long time to get there. Everybody thinks, oh, it's only 2 words. Oh God, we started at 1 million and we ended up with 2. But the point was, to reveal something implies it's always there. It's always going to be there. I'm not doing anything except maybe, I'm a glorified polishing cloth, right?
Right. You're helping the person reveal what's always been there.
You're the goal.
They just can't see it. It's always inside of you.
Yeah. Or they're just not in touch with it. Like they might not even have a concept that it's inside.
Well, that's what Jesus said. It was an inside job. Like turn in.
They all said it.
They all said
That's
it. That was the thing that I was saying. Like everything I read was always it's inside. Go inward. It's in you. It's you. Like there's nothing without that you need. It's all within.
Right. And what without is good for is informing you where you are missing getting the information from the inside. Because if we could just go introspective, and we could all do it ourselves, but if we could, we would, and we're not. Right. So the material world, or the world that we live in, it provides us with that information, and our senses is where we take, I'm back to information, right? Because this is our senses are where we take the information in from the outside, but we're processing it backwards. We're using the outside as proof of why we can't, instead of as feedback of why we didn't. Right. So it's a feedback loop. And this is my first book. So I was a feedback control engineer. And I never thought, 15 years after I graduated from U of T, I was like, oh my God, humans do this. Humans are feedback loops, but we're taking the information, we're doing the wrong thing with it. So you measure your bank account or your sales or your relationship status or whatever your goal is, and you don't have it, and you go, see, I can't do it. And so you use it as proof. But what happens with that thought is then you start another cycle from I can't do it, versus taking the performance point as feedback and saying, oh, I was trying to do $1 million deal and I did a $20 deal. Well, that's not $1 million. So something in my process isn't working, because this is the end. It's not that I can't, but I didn't do something. So I need to go back and change something material, right? And then run the process again and see if that gets me there. And it's feedback. And very few people in the moment of failure, okay, so they measure their failure point. Very few people in that moment celebrate. Now, that sounds a bit far-fetched, but everybody talks about gratitude journal, gratitude this. Look, I'm going to be straight with you and all your listeners. If you can't generate gratitude looking at a freaking sunset or a puppy, there is something seriously wrong with you.
Okay? Thank you.
But that's the going to the gym part. You got to do it every time you see a puppy in a sunset so that you know what the emotion is. But the real time for the gratitude, the hard gratitude, as I call it, is when you're face down in the mud and you go, oh, thank you for this feedback. I'm going right back to it. Real gratitude, not bullshit gratitude. While you're face down in the mud, if you are fully present to it shouldn't be any other way because this was the way the machine was designed to run, then you have all the information you need because you're like, oh, I'm missing a bolt in section 4. I got to go back and put it right. And so, but nobody does that. And that's why people end up in these crazy loops.
And that you just, when you said that, all of a sudden I had another connected moment there. As I remember, the Buddha said that life is suffering. It's attachment is suffering, and it's attachment to what you explained there in saying that when you see the feedback loop, I go, it's not that I can't, it's just I didn't because this thing didn't happen. So I'm not attaching myself to the result. I know the self is capable of anything. It's just, it didn't happen. It's not that I can't, it didn't happen because
something was in the way.
Something was wrong in the engineering. And now I can see inside your head now. I understand.
But maybe not wrong, because I don't like the word wrong because people put judgment on wrong, but we should just say ineffective. It didn't work. It wasn't the right flow, right? Like something was blocking it.
That you didn't have the right bolts in the right spot, so it didn't function the way you wanted it to because the engineering was done wrong. So the steps were not in a way that would produce the outcome you wanted. It produced a different outcome. Well, if you want the other outcome, you need to change the steps.
Right. And so
but there's no attachment to that.
And there's the material world. And that's the strength and benefit of the material world is we have these processes and we can appreciate data. Everybody wants data, but nobody knows what good data is, for God's sakes. Right. So once you know that, that's it. Then everything else that takes place is energetic. And by energetic, I mean, like, I have a slide that I show to my audiences when I speak around the world, and it shows the power spectral density, which is a fancy word for an electronic signal, okay, of someone who's in a state of gratitude and someone who's in a state of anger. And the power spectral density of gratitude is organized. Most of the signal vibrates around 0.1 hertz. So when you look at it, it's got this big spike at 0.1, and then it's like, noisy in the other frequencies, the other bands, right? But if you look at anger, it's just, it doesn't have a spike anywhere. It's just kind of spread out. It's very noisy. And when you talk about the relative power, we're talking about power in the sense of reach, right? Like you can, it's like a signal. Think radio music or whatever. If your signal is, or think your cell phone, you got 1 bar. So gratitude is like 5 bars and anger is like 1 bar, right? And so you're going to get more from the signal. You're going to be able to interact more information between you and the field from the state of gratitude, right? Now, it sounds a little complicated. And when I put the slide up, it's like, the units make people burst into flames. And I go, look, the shortcut is go watch Monsters, Inc.
Yeah.
That's the shortcut. Any questions? So anger works. Like anxiety, they work. They have energy. They have movement. They have force. But love, gratitude, they work better. I don't know what to tell you. It works better. It just, like, they both work.
Infinitely more powerful than the fear that the energy they capture with the fear.
Believing you're not good enough works. It keeps you safe from ridicule and scorn and risk. And, it's not like people are like, oh, I'm not good enough. Yeah, but when you made that up, when you decided to believe that, it served you. It saved your ass in the playground probably or whatever, right? Like it was a smart move at the time. The problem is it's so outdated now. It's like ridiculous. Right? Like wearing a pair of Sergio Valentes or something, like it's tight. So if you let it go and replace it with something new, then you are free to create from the new place. But, again, that whole be careful what you wish for. Like when you create it, you're going to open yourself up again to judgment and people, not everybody loves what you do. Right. So, and they don't need to, you need to love what you do. I try to normalize it for people you're not broken. You're just outdated.
Right. There's that upgrade that
You just need an upgrade.
you've reframed my thinking around the updated software to a more joyous concept of of upgrading. Like it's what you just explained there in terms of the feedback loop and seeing what it is more joyous for me now. Like I just literally that little
Well,
switch, the
excellent.
connection just dropped right there because and you know, just the whole point, like the Viking Academy for me. So I was, you know, accountant,
The
business coach,
Viking Academy.
Viking Academy, you know, and I play in a heavy metal band. I'm playing, you know, drum and lead singing in a heavy metal band. That's my joy place. It's about exploring the world, like exploration, discovery, and that's the adventure. That's the life. That's the fun. The fun is, as you said, when you're face down in the mud going, cool,
No,
okay,
thank you. Yeah.
you know, but then getting up and wiping the mud off your face and going, let's get back at it. Like the Vikings concept of going to Valhalla and heaven was battling during the day, getting killed, and then resurrecting, and then having a big party with Odin in the Valhalla hall, and then redoing it all over again. Like that is like the
Um,
epitome of like what people's hell is, like my idea of heaven. But when it comes to my actual life and some of the things I've been thinking about is I have that patterning that it's I'm wrong, not I got the process. The process didn't line up the way I wanted it to.
and that's true. And probably for a period in your life, believing that you were wrong, it probably shielded you from something intense. And so it kept you from, putting yourself out there and getting hurt or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, so I'm not downplaying what's happened in people's lives, but the thing is, the only moment you have is now. The past is done. And it probably didn't even happen to the body you're in because the research suggests that our cells replace, the body kind of completely replaces itself every 7 to 10 years depending on who you talk to. So if it happened more than 10 years ago, it didn't even happen in the meat suit you're in. And so how are you maintaining that? Like, and there's nothing wrong with maintaining it. Truly, I'm not the greatness police or any police really. It's just people come to me and they say, this isn't working for me. Like I only ever ask, how's that working for you? I don't want to mind read. You seem to be struggling, but that's my mind read. So you tell me it's working fine. Because I've had teenagers, right? It's fine. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you there. I've got 24 and a 22-year-old, and now Isla's 12. So we're gonna get to
Oh
go
boy.
starting into that role right now. It's like, oh, you know what FINE stands for, don't you, kid? Know what? Fucked up, irrational, neurotic, and emotional. Okay, yeah, doesn't really fly. Um, so one of the things that you did, so you do neuro linguistic programming, right?
Yes.
Yes,
NLP.
NLP.
Nope.
I went through and did Blast with my energy healer, which was bilateral adjustment stimulation therapy, which was
Cool.
hypnotherapy with eye movement back and forth based on my traumas from the past, right? To
Is
try
that
and
EMDR or is it something different?
it's something slightly different.
Okay.
Again, Nikki will be on the podcast later this month, and
Sure.
I'll be able to extract a little bit more from her on that. But it was that for me, going through those kind of those traumatic experiences, the trauma. So everybody's had traumas. One of the things is my mom telling me that I was wrong, and here's all the things. But getting through and breaking that, realizing that it's there, but then having that NLP blast process, all of a sudden I don't have that emotional energy attached to it anymore. I can see it for what it is, and it's more, oh, that's just the old programming. Now I'm looking at focusing on new programming. The work that you do you go back and help people with that unlocking?
Yeah. So in our because we have a school called Greatness U, and I teach what I use primarily. I study everything, but you can't teach everything. So we teach 6 things. We teach neurolinguistic programming, we teach hypnosis, we teach timeline therapy, which is an amazing technique that allows you to use time, temporal perspective, to reframe the past, and then it allows you to completely because of the reframe and the way that it's done in the similar, not the same as what you're talking about, but the positioning of the visualizations and things like that are distinct. That allows for the actual resolution of those negative emotions so that they are no longer resident in the nervous system. We teach those three things. We started teaching our students heart math because people need more resilience, and the heart math methodology offers people a way to just make their bodies more resilient to change. So we teach that. Then we teach 2 coaching frameworks. Now not everybody who comes to us is a coach, but the way we look at it is our trainings are like personal development, but we teach at certification standards in case you're a coach. So if you're not a coach, you learn the gold standard. You don't need it, but you learn the gold standard, which at least you can talk intelligently to others. Maybe if you're a business leader, you can feel confident that if you do a little bit of this or a little bit of that, you're at least, not screwing someone up. For the coaches that are there, we teach at such a high standard that they get board certificates and whatnot in these genres that they can then go out and feel confident in the world of their practice. So it's a little different what we do. And is an over design for personal development? Yes. It's not a 3-day weekend and rah, rah, rah. It's a little bit more work for the person who's just in it for the personal development, but it's very thorough. It's kind of like working with the coach while you're doing the training. So it benefits everyone, but it is a little bit more intense now for everybody.
So the timeline therapy you were talking about sounds very similar to the blast that I worked with Nikki, because I released, like I physically feel the release there. Like I can talk about all these things now and I don't have that emotional reaction. Right. Like I had it released under hypnotherapy and it was quite something. Like I started to really see how, which I love your simplicity question to people. It's like, how is it working? Is it working for you? And I was seeing now how that thinking is not working for me. Right. And
that's all that's required. So any technique, and then this is what I always tell people. I mean, those are the 6 we teach. Somebody else teaches something else. There's a million people teaching a million things, and they all work because there's a little thing on the chalkboard behind me, which looks like a little check mark, and it's the process of change. And the thing is, for anything to change, all that is required is a burning desire, not a lukewarm mediocrity, a burning desire for something else, and a willingness to do what it takes. And in the case of working with a coach, that's to be coachable. If you're not coachable, the coach isn't a miracle worker, right? You have to give up the way you've been doing it. You have to submit to the process, because if you don't, nothing will work. And that's okay. You don't, like I always say to people, I'm not the change police. Keep it exactly as it is. But you keep telling me you want something different. And they go, well, every time we do something, it's uncomfortable. I go, great. So if you see the word behind me, it says uncomfortable. So the only time you're comfortable is in the comfort zone. And that's where no change is possible. So the minute you step outside the comfort zone, literally everything should be uncomfortable. That's what it's supposed to feel like. So if I tell you it's supposed to be uncomfortable, are you okay with it? They're like, yeah, great, let's go.
Because that means I'm growing. Now it's uncomfortable. I know it's growing.
Yay.
Yeah, like it's but the way you've reframed it though, Gina, it's so much more palatable. I really like the way that you bring these concepts across, because it's an attraction rather than promotion quality that you have in the way that you talk about these things. Because I know from firsthand experience, when I've worked with someone and I'm the coach and I'm coaching them, because I do the business coaching, but obviously I get into mindset and I've got the psychology and the spirituality, my own teaching model. But if they don't want to change, it's like, I look at them like, I'm not doing the work here. You have to do the work. Like, I'm here to lead, guide, and protect you through this process. That's my job, but it's all coming from within you.
100%.
You're just beating your head against the wall, right? But the people that want it, and I love this burning desire, you want it. Being a coach is so easy for those people.
But that's why, like, see,
it's
this
so
is the
joyful.
Thing. You nailed it. I don't promote because it has to be attractive, because they have to come with a 10 out of 10 desire and a complete coachability, or there's nothing that will work. So in fact, I actually turn away Now, this is for my own private practice, just because of my travel and whatever, but I actually turn away more people than I work with, because I am unless a person has had a burning desire and shows a real willingness and coachability, I don't want to take them, because I have such a great track record. I have no interest in blemishing that. And I don't need to be right. If they want to keep their life the way it is, I'm not going to argue with them.
Give them complete. I give you all. You're allowed to be completely miserable. I'm going to allow you.
You're allowed to be whatever you want.
Yeah.
Honestly, the number one presupposition, there's a number of presuppositions when we teach NLP that we say you don't have to believe these things, but they make what I'm about to teach you a lot more palatable. And the first one is respect the other person's model of the world. It doesn't mean agree, placate, condone. It just means, hey man, respect that everybody's got a different model of the world. And there's a diagram above me, and it says millions, billions, and trillions. So in the field, in 1954, Pribham and Miller measured that there were 2 million bits of information in the field. They measured it in their lab. Now, I don't know how they did it. Read the book if you want to know how. But they measured it. And then they were trying to figure out, how do we make a computer? What does the brain take in from the 2 million in the field? And they calculated that the brain took in 126 bits a second. The calculation is 7 plus or minus 2 over 1/18 of a second. Blah, blah, blah. It's 126 bits. Okay. So just do the math. Millions to hundreds. Okay. So our brain throws out most of what's available. And I argue that it's maybe billions or even trillions now, because obviously in 1954 to now that there's way more information, but our brains are still doing hundreds. You know, somebody once said to me at a talk recently, oh, I heard it was 800. Great. Hundreds. It's still zero, 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 zero to hundreds, right? So
yeah.
That's a massive data loss. And so when I select 126 and you select 126, they clearly overlap a little bit, which is why we're vibing and we did this podcast.
Yeah.
But if we didn't overlap at all, I wouldn't know you at all. I wouldn't even know you exist. And then in the middle is like the people we like, the people we don't like. We have very slim overlaps, and then we call them wrong and us right, or vice versa, when really it's just another model of the world. It's not mine. And I don't necessarily want that model of the world, but I can respect that your meat suit pulled in a different 126 bits. I can respect the process, and I can get, oh, okay. Now, the only way to change your mind is to take in different bits of information. That's it.
Right.
And in order to take in different bits of information, the information hole has to be open. If it's not open, there's no new information. And so coaching, when you're coaching someone, you're going to, what did you say? Guide something.
Lead, guide, and protect.
Lead, guide, and protect. What you're going to do is you're going to try to get them to let go of a couple of bits and put in a couple of new bits. And then that will have a transformative on their beingness, because it's totally different model.
You have something on the website that I read that also just jumps out at me.
Yeah.
And it's when you know that any reality is possible, but not all realities are probable.
Right. Based on exactly what I just said.
So that's where you're tying that in, is saying every reality is possible because of all of billions and trillions of information. It's all there available to us if we can remove those blockages and have the brain talk to the legs, so to speak, and have that
literally
clear channel.
Tune in, right?
Tune in, which is gratitude, which you love, and gratitude has that spike in energy that helps you hone in more than anger does, right?
Right.
And then, but not all realities are probable.
Yeah, because that's the programming. You're more likely to see the world today the way you saw it yesterday, unless you do something different. That's the law of inertia, right? Objects in motion tend to stay in motion, and objects at rest tend to stay at rest unless acted upon by a huge force. That's a scientific way of saying you have free will, right? Every day you wake up, it can be the same day or it can be a different day. That's based on your choice. And you know, if most people don't change, because And it's not because they're bad or wrong or losers or anything like that. It's literally the brain's job. It's the amygdala's job to like keep it the same, right? So it goes, is this within my band of comfort? Like, is this within my tolerance level? Okay, we're good. The minute you step outside of it, the amygdala is like, alert, alert, caution, 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 right? And then that's where free will comes in. You can say, hey, brain, amygdala, I love you. Thanks for trying to protect me. I'm not about to walk off a cliff. I'm good. So I'm going to do this anyway. And then the minute you override that mechanism that's there to protect you, the brain throws out that tactic. It's like, screw it. She's going over. So then it flips the switch to plasticity. So now it flips you into like hyper noticing, because now it's in reprogramming mode, right? So it's like, take in everything, figure out what's going to get us this stupid goal as fast as possible so we can lock down a process and get back into, security zone, right? So it's reprogramming. So you make that change, and then it's again, you need your free will here to repeat those behaviors until they become dominant. So until they become the comfort zone.
Uncomfortable zone becomes your comfort zone.
Right. The new normal, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then it's time for something new, right? So that's just how we're programmed. But that's a whole process. People think just getting it once, like, that's it. Boom, I did it. Yeah. It's like, you never did it again, right? Whereas a gymnast does a back handspring on the beam 67 million times, right? So that when they're under pressure and their nerves and they're, in second place and they're going for the win, they don't need to think. Their body knows exactly where to go. That's a dominant program, right? It's got to be something you can do in the worst circumstances, under massive pressure. So therefore, crises, anytime a crisis happens and you can execute who you are, your highest self, then that's my program. I'm there. That's where I live. This is where I live. But if a crisis happens and you collapse backwards into an old way of being, well, that's feedback that it wasn't the dominant program. So then what do? You go out and you double down on practicing. You don't give up. That's insane.
I've likened this to, people don't like this verbiage, but I've got a lizard brain back here, and the lizard brain's trying to keep me alive. Everything you're talking about,
its only goal.
It's just keep me alive. And so be safe and secure, Eric. Stay inside so that's why we don't change, is because our brain is trying to keep us alive.
Well, it's literally its job. Or am I still breathing? Okay, I'm doing a good job. Like that's its job.
Yeah.
That's the hard code. Keep this meat suit going.
Which I find insane. There's like almost like this cognitive dissonance that happens inside, because it's like, I want to be safe and secure, but at the same time, I'm getting stifled by this boredom. Like, there's two things humans don't like: it's change and stagnation. Like those two, like it's always
yin and yang, right? Like,
it's always in a state of frustration because things aren't changing enough, or they're changing too much.
But that's why Maslow wrote the hierarchy, right? Because like the brain is, it's useful for human sort of perseverance, for the brain to keep the mother alive, so it can feed the baby until the baby matures, right? Like it's good to have that thing hardwired so that the species can continue. So like that's an important function. But then once you kind of got that sorted, and now you're it's not hard to get food and be sheltered and whatever, then it's like, okay, well, now what? Then the spirit side, if you will, the heart data starts to, well, I want to grow, right? I want to grow. And so then there's the push and pull. And so it's not wrong, but it's like, well, I hate this safety first. Well, says who? How about safety second?
Like, yeah, thank you. Sign me up. I'm sick and tired of be safe. I don't want to be fucking safe.
Well, no, I don't want to walk off a cliff, but like, okay, I mean, until told otherwise, right? I'm quoting Friends now. Chandler says, until told otherwise, right? I'll be safe. So until you tell me not to be, let's just go with I'm being safe. Okay, good. Now, next, expansion or connection or whatever you want the value to be. When I quit my corporate job, my grandfather, who, in the late 1940s came with his 3 daughters on a boat with his wife, and they came to Canada, and it was perilous, and the boat caught on fire and a whole bunch of crap happened. And so when I quit my corporate job that was the reason they risked their lives, he cried. And I was like, but I didn't understand why he was crying. I was like, dude, like, you guys did great. Your daughters went to university. We all went to university. I started my own business. We're good. But he was like, but you got the golden ticket. You were working at the corporate job with the, the pension and the blah, 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 blah. And I was like,
hell for me.
So we have different values, right? So it's evolution. That's what the, Maslow and Graves, they were all writing about our evolution. Now, not everybody's evolving at the same time, which is why we have a bit of a quagmire going on in the world right now. And people don't understand, again, back to respect everybody's model of the world. So I like NLP and I like timeline therapy and hypnosis because they're simple and they give a real context for how can this world be what it is. I don't look out on the world and see something wrong. I look out on the world and see a bunch of feedback. And some of that feedback causes me to take different actions than others, but it can't be any other way. Now, I don't know, maybe you did this. Do you remember pet computers? Like, we used to have to program
yes,
pet computers. And so I remember, 10 equals Gina, 20, 20 go to 10 or something like this. And it would just, my name would go down the screen. And if you didn't do the code right, it didn't work. And if you did the code, and then there was a glitch. Like, so it's basic computer programming. But I remember kind of understanding like the order of operations and how programs work. And so, if you start a fire, like a barbecue, and you put a piece of meat on it and then you leave and come back 3 hours later, it's going to be charcoal. Not because it's bad or it doesn't believe in itself or their forces are out to get it, but because you left a piece of meat on a fire. And the process is that eventually it burns and turns into charcoal. So why are you surprised when you get up and you turn on the air quote news? I like to call it the olds because there's nothing new about it. It's all designed to steal your very precious 126 bits of attention. You get down on yourself, then you put crappy food in your body, and then you don't go to a job you don't want to do. And why are you surprised that at the end of the day, you have no energy and no motivation? Like, hello, you're running a program called Crapville, right? So turn it around, change something, and the entire day will change. And you could try to change the circumstances. It temporarily works sometimes, but the problem is you got to use so much energy to keep the circumstances doing your bidding that it's much easier to just change yourself, and then you can be in any circumstance. It doesn't matter. Life is beautiful. Like, watch the movie.
I love what you've got here. I want to read these last few lines here,
Cool.
What you got on the website, and then I want to make sure people know where to go to find out more about you. But you've got first, it says first, and I could talk to you for hours. Like, we could do this for hours. Man, this has been fantastic.
Thanks.
But here's the thing I wanted to share with everyone. It's on your website, which is Gina Mollicone. Mollicone.
Let's go to the mall.
Yeah, GinaMollicone.com. It says, first, you need to know what prevents you from accessing your greatness. Then you need to know how to bring the new reality into existence. I love that.
That's it.
That's
what I do. When I work with private clients, that's what we do.
I love that.
It's very intense. It's sort of like 10, 12, 14 hours tops. It's over.
The Greatness You.
Greatness You is the school where I am the curriculum developer and mostly the teacher.
And is Greatness You, what's the URL for that?
greatness.u.com. That's our school. So it's not just me. I mean, the vision for Greatness You, world domination, multiple trainers. We're getting there. We had a bit of a setback in 2020. So we're just taking that feedback and rolling it into the new model. But Greatness You is meant to be an educational entity. We do our corporate training there. We do our personal development training there. And then GinaMollicone.com is really me. It's my work, my coaching, my speaking, me. It's me. It's me. It's only me. No one else can do it. I'm the only Gina Mollicone out there.
And I'm glad you are, because this is fucking awesome.
Or Gina, as one of my clients said to me the other day. Gina?
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we talked for 8 seconds and here we are. It's the power of serendipity.
I think we're going to have you back on the podcast again.
I don't think this is our last meeting.
No, it's not at all.
Cool.
Okay. Keep exploring, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Viking Academy podcast. Make sure to leave us your honest feedback by leaving a review on Apple or Spotify, and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.